Yeah, I saw your Instagram. Address Brad's Florida Keys getaway. Yes, geez, my Instagram DMs, requests, emails have been overwhelmed to analyze it. And what I can say is it went from Mets to manatees. And it was basically more the same. Had going on a 1950s style cookie cutter vacation. Probably saw a brochure somewhere at the USPS break area. Or you ever see those racks when you go to a tourist trap like Vegas or other places? They have those racks with all those brochures in it about all kind of hotels, I guess, and amusement parks and fishing expeditions. And they tell you that they're having a sale right now. There's Onyx. She's part of the podcast too. And he looks at them and he gets a grin on his face, and here we go again. So I'd like to start off saying that the weather was perfect. The humidity was very reasonable, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. And when you're in Florida, that means there's going to be no humidity. Comfortable. And of course, you get a nice ocean breeze when you're living within proximity of an ocean, as I certainly am. Onyx, Onyx, get off of there. Hey, she's going to knock the shelf down. Get off of there. Look at this. She put her hands up on that top shelf. That's a crucifix up there, Onyx. You better show a little respect, although it's just a symbol. So Brad showed his true colors. It started off with an alcoholic drink on a table, sitting on a dock. We've seen that before. You can do that. Hell, I can go ride my bike down there now and do that if I wanted to. Sit on by the ocean. Oceans all look the same. Florida's all look the same. But now he was at the Keys. And of course, when he says he's going to the Keys, that's supposed to entail some type of magical response from others. And I'm sure at USPS Delray, he was saying that for weeks. I'm going to the Keys on vacation these days. I want these days off. Me and my girlfriend are going to the Keys. So you saw what the Keys was. Is it any different from Lake Worth, Delray Beach, Boynton Beach? Those maniacs have visited and collaborated with me? No, no difference at all. And it's like one of the maniacs has suggested, why don't you go to another location? Go to the Rocky Mountains or go to somewhere in Washington, the state of Washington, get some different scenery. Go at least do that. Don't just go to the different Florida tourist traps. So anyways, he took pictures of the alcohol, of course, the almighty alcohol. He took some pictures of some seagulls as well as some aquatic life. And it's pelicans. And then he got the manatees. And this was on his Instagram. And I never see it as is. I'm always alerted of it, or I'm sent clips of it by fellow maniacs. And you'd be surprised at how many I get. And they want my commentary on it. So he had about 30 or 40 manatees, big blobs. Pretty much, if you want to use the word boring, which that's a cookie cutter word that I don't like to use, that's the most unexciting thing you could ever look at. I suggest looking at cattle in a field is much more interesting than looking at a bunch of bloated manatees laying in the water back to back. No expression, no face, no personality. They don't do any jumps or tricks like dolphins do. They don't have the detail of a shark or some type of exotic fish. They just lay there like a hump, like a big, it looks like a bunch of potatoes in a pot. And that's what we got. And in the most interesting, or I should say bizarre thing that I've seen on that Instagram is Brad having a medal around his neck. And if you know Brad, he's no competition for him. It's just not worth it. He said that many times. Who would be stupid enough to enter a show? What do you get out of it? He would say. Mr. No Comp Brad, which I consider that ribbon around his neck. And there's no real story behind it. He didn't go into detail. He just put a ribbon around his neck. It could have been somebody that was there seated on that dock with him. He could have said, "Can I borrow that for a second?" So I don't make too much of it, but it said 7-mile run on it. And you know as well as I did that Brad, after a day of drinking, is not going to run 7 miles. Mr. Non-competition himself. I don't think he's capable of it. But in any event, if he did, what's the point? Humans are not meant to run like that for long distances. And it really is detrimental on the body. It eats muscle tissue because it dips into your glycogen reserves, and then it starts dipping into your muscle to gain the fuel for that walk. And those beer calories are not going to provide fuel for that little 7-mile run. And it will lower your testosterone when you're doing that type of aerobic activity, which is nothing more than it is. But the most shocking part was Brad's body. He looks well under victim weight. He looks the lightest since I've ever seen him. His beard is totally gray. He looks older than I do, and I'll be 54 in less than 2 weeks chronologically, although I'm 18 forever. And his neck he looked like a pencil neck, looked pencil thin. So if he decided to take up that route, he's following into the hands of you-know-who, demasculinize him, get him off the weights. And you saw the famous live last year where he said that he's into toning. Anybody that trains with weights says they're not lifting heavy anymore and they're into toning is headed for huge muscle loss and depression. That's just the way it is. And that type of aerobic activity does not mix well with staying young, gaining and retaining muscle mass, as well as keeping bone mass, which is critical, bone mass, muscle mass, as you age. So obviously a limited amount of cardiovascular activity is excellent for you. But when you're doing that type of 7 miles, and it shows. So that's all I'll touch on this subject today, just more of the same from Brad. The 1950s vacations, the attractions, the Hoover Dam, Singer Island, pictures on the beach with the alcohol, pictures at the beachfront bars with the alcohol, pictures on cruise ships with the alcohol, pictures at respectable street comedy clubs, Rob Zombie concerts, food trucks, firework displays, 1950s entertainment, which some families enjoy getting together and doing that. But to spend top dollar on it, spend an entire day doing that, and what are you learning? See, that's Brad's problem with a podcast. He won't do a podcast because he can't bring any knowledge to a podcast. He admitted many times he didn't know anything about politics. Well, what kind of man in his 40s knows nothing about politics? He's the same age as Tom Brady. Brad, you're grinding yourself into the ground. Get your recuperation. Get back on the weights. And quite frankly, you maniacs want you to be on a podcast. So get some knowledge, will you? And that's any maniac can feel free to comment on that situation. Hey, Brad, how was that vacation in the Keys? Oh, it was beautiful. We had a good time. Yeah, I saw your Instagram. Those manatees are big. He says, yeah, they were great.